you very much. I would like to thank the organizers for this really wonderful workshop. I feel a little bit unnecessary because the speakers before me were just brilliant, and I feel as if I'm going to repeat some of the things that we heard before, but still, here I am. So I will focus on, surprisingly, on figurines of women, and especially on motherhood, women alone, but also women with children and also pregnancy. But first, I would like to stress this model or paradigm that we all talk about, what I call the F word, or the F words, female equals fertility. Now, in my talk, I will obviously treat fertility as an essential component of the figurines because I'm dealing with reproduction, with women, with mothers, or maybe other figures with children. So fertility will play a role in this presentation. But fertility is a very general term, and sometimes it's better to break it down into its components, because fertility includes many things, many milestones, and especially challenges, concerns, and risks. So if I divide it into three main stages, so the first one is from virginity to pregnancy. So the young woman is maybe wishing a successful marriage or partnership, relationship. She might be concerned about being barren, not being able to have children. And once she becomes pregnant, the health of the pregnancy and preventing miscarriage is also an issue. And then when it comes to delivery, of course, the chance of losing your life or losing the baby, which, as we know, it's a very risky time, but also delivering the right sex. So if you already have 5 daughters, what about the next one? Will it be a daughter? Will it be a boy? Especially in traditional societies when the gender means a lot in terms of inheritance, in terms of working in the field, and other such constructs. And the third challenge is the motherhood. And we can talk about infant mortality, which was very high, as we know, and the health and well-being of the baby, and other challenges that I think every parent knows until today. So what does it have to do with the figurines? So first, the test case I would like to look at is the longue durée in a very specific area. Here I have for you the periods in brackets, the more specific centuries of the figurines that I will show in a second, and the map of the area as a whole of the Southern Levant. And within this map, let's zoom in to the Judean low hills, or the Shephela, which is in the southern part of Israel, an area which is full of, as you can see, full of tales and ancient sites from various periods. So let's start with the late Bronze Age, and as we've already seen before, the most typical type, or actually the almost only type we have in the late Bronze Age, are those plaque figurines, or as Baba mentioned before, a starter plaque, which are very typical small plaques with a woman in relief, different iconographies, but they all seem to be either lying or standing. In most cases, there are no divine symbols or attributes, and they're very common throughout Canaan, and also they're very common in the Shephela, in the Lohi. And here are some examples. I won't get into details, but what is common to them in regard to our workshop is that normally they don't carry a child, And in most cases, they don't seem to be pregnant. They seem to be very young women, very handsome. Sometimes they have nice headdresses or nice hairdos. And sometimes they point at their breasts or at their genitals, but they don't seem to be mothers, maybe only potentially mothers. There are, of course, exceptions, but the exceptions are only 3 figurines we know so far out of hundreds and hundreds. And this is the Revadim type of a woman opening her vulva. And as you can see, she has twins, either suckling or maybe inside her womb, still as fetuses. We don't know. There are different opinions on this type. But this one is the exception to the rule. The rule is of women who seem to be young and they are not pregnant, neither have children. So let's move to the Iron Age. So now we're in the Iron Age. And in the Iron Age, we have a different type, as you probably know. In the Shephela, as well as throughout Judea, we have what we call the JPF, the Judean Pillar figurine. Some of them are, the face are mold-made, some are pinched and handmade. But what is common to all of them, that it's a figurine of a woman holding her breast, and the breasts are very, very big. And some scholars thought it might hint to a woman who is nursing, a woman who has milk, who is feeding her baby, but the baby is absent. We have no baby. Of many, many figurines, we have maybe 2, as Erin Derby has shown, that carry children, but most of them are without children in Judea and in the Shephela particularly. So here we can see some examples from Tel Achish and Tel Beit Shemesh, sites in the Shephela, and you can see they're all very similar. And this is almost the only type of woman we have in figurines from the Iron Age in this region. But other figurines from this region portray other types, not only women. Unlike the Late Bronze Age, where we have almost only women, here we have a whole selection of types, including men and riders and furniture models and birds and all kinds of types. And animals are the great majority of these assemblages. So we do have women, we don't have any children, but women are only one part of the typology of the Judean assemblages. Now, if you compare it to Phoenicia, and here I thank Barbara for her beautiful paper that I refer to here. So in Phoenicia, we also have a variety of types. The pillar figurines are a little bit different. Some of these pillar figurines carry children, but they are the minority. Very few of them carry children. Most of them playing drums, holding a dove, and other types. The same goes for Jordan. In Regine's work on the female iconography, the female figurines from Jordan, about less than 2% of the figurines are of women holding children, and the rest are women in other poses, in other gestures, in other activities. So, as Stephanie Budin already noticed, women with children in the Iron Age, Southern Levant, and also in the Late Bronze Age are very rare. And she called it a fringe element. And she brings 3 possible reasons for that. So the first one could be that less interest was in human fertility than we assume. The second one is that ancient Levantine art does not entirely reflect Levantine culture, which is something very important to bear in mind. And the third one is that human fertility was conceived of in male terms and not in female terms. So we don't know why we hardly see any children, but the outcome is that during the Late Bronze Age and the Iron Age, in the Judean low hills, when we have women, we have them as single figure of a woman without any interaction, unless the figurines were grouped together. But that we cannot tell whether the users were taking like a couple of figurines and put them together. Now let's move to the Persian period in the Shephela, in Judean low hills. And during the Persian period, the place has become an administrative and ethnic territory called Idumea, with Idumeans residing at this region. And we can see these dockets, this ostraca mentioning the Idumean god Kos. As you can see here, who can read Aramaic, you can see the name Kos inscribed here. So what do we have in the Persian period in the Shephela? So we have variety of types and styles. We have Phoenician and Aegean influences, as Marianne has already shown us. And here you can see just a selection from Tel Khalif. And we witnessed the rise of motherhood in terracottas. Now, I call it motherhood or mothers. I'm aware that it can be another caretaker, like a wet nurse or a stepmother, but I think that it is most likely to be the mother who is represented in these figurines. So here we can see that what I call celebrating the motherhood. At Maresha, for example, we have more male figurines than than females, but of the female, most of them, the great majority of them, show the woman or the mother maybe holding the child seated on her left shoulder, the same type as we saw yesterday from the Western Mediterranean. So this you can see on the left, and on the right you can see the same type and another type of a nude woman holding a child to her left. By the way, the one with the child seated on her shoulder seem to be half nude. So the upper part seems to be exposed and the lower one seems to be dressed. So it's kind of showing and not showing the partial nakedness. Now, here you can see some more examples for two more sites, Tel Tzipor and Tel Erani, and they are very common. This is the first time that we have a woman with children in large quantities in the terracotta assemblages in the same region. Now, if we look at the pose, which we talked about it yesterday a little bit, at first, when I studied these figurines, I thought this pose was unnatural and very risky. And no one can hold a child this way, and he can simply fall down, and it didn't seem to be very realistic. So I thought maybe it's kind of a display. You don't really hold your child this way. You just want to display him or her, to show him, maybe to thank the gods, maybe to show how successful you are. But then a colleague of mine, Irit Sifer, drew my attention to these beautiful paintings and also photographs from the 19th century of women holding the children in a similar way. So talking about why is it on the left side, whether it's, again, to let your right hand be free to do other things, or maybe for other reasons, but we always have them on the left, and also in most of the paintings and drawings from the 19th century, so that's something to think of. Now, what about other places? Now, if we look at Phoenicia, so at Phoenicia, we do have women with children, but in Phoenicia, they are the minority. In all the assemblages that I've checked, and I would love to hear if you know otherwise, Barbara, Mariana, and all Ida, in all assemblages that I checked, the women with children compose less than 10% in the assemblage, and they're not very common. Unlike the Shephela, the Judean low hills, where they are very common. They are the commonest type, at least at Maresha. So what about children? We hardly have any children during the Persian period. I think only in the 4th century, they start appearing. The photo on the right is a stone statuette, and a Cypriot, probably Cypriot limestone statuette. The one on the left is the only one made of terracotta that I know of, and this is from the northern part of the Shephela. So we don't have many children as a subject by itself. But it started probably in the very end of the Persian period. Now let's move to the Hellenistic period. And unfortunately, from the Hellenistic period, I have examples only from the main city, which is Maresha, where we have thousands of figurines so far. We don't have them from other sites in the Shephela. So this was the main city of Idumea in the 3rd and 2nd centuries BCE, a flourishing one, a very prosperous city. And here we can see, again, a change. We do have, as we did in the previous period, women holding children, not on their shoulder anymore, but wrapped in their cloak. And they are very common in the assemblage. And we also have the type of the coroplastic, of the woman nursing her baby, or maybe not her baby, but probably her baby. So these two types are very common at Maresha. But we also have plenty of children, and just as Mariana showed in the Haraib, we have many children depicted without their parents, just as a subject by their own. You can see here children wearing the kausia, which is a kind of beret, a Macedonian cap, and nude children, and also girls, although there are more boys than girls. And we can see them riding horses and feeding animals, and so kind of playing or acting in a certain way. And we also have evidence for education, again, as Mariana showed us before. So we have this Ephebe, this is a school boys and also a school girl. And the one on the left shows a girl and probably a boy next to her, where you can see this little foot here. And on the right, we have a mold made of plaster for a standing schoolboy. And here you can see his diptych, his tablet, held by in his arm. So we can see the activity of the children. We don't have many babies. I think so far we have maybe 1 or 2, but this infant, this baby, is very large scale, and it reminds of dolls of babies, but I don't have many of those, unlike the other types that we have plenty of. We also have children deities. We didn't have them before. We don't know how the gods look like in the Persian period and before that, because we don't have attributes. But in the Hellenistic period, we have the same variety, not only with mortals, but also with gods, which is really interesting, this comparison between the divine and the mortals, the normal people. So in sum, so in the late Bronze Age, we have primarily young women, perhaps virgins, only few show pregnancy. In the Iron Age, we have more mature women, perhaps nursing, but without the baby, those that are holding their breasts, heavy breasts. In the Persian period, we have women with children that they are very dominant in the Shephela. In the Hellenistic period, we have variety of types, women holding children, nursing babies, and children as a standalone subject. So how can we interpret this change, if at all? As Ida said before, it's very hard to give an answer to such questions. We can assume that maybe these figurines address different milestones, different concerns, as I showed before, being able to marry well, being able to become pregnant, being able to have enough milk to feed your baby, being able to keep your baby alive, and maybe different concerns. But first, I have two reservations regarding the picture drawn here. First, these social changes over time are examined through a very specific and limited lens of terracotta figurines, and obviously we lack most of the text and most of the other evidence that can support any kind of idea. And second, the changes, especially those from the Persian and Hellenistic period, they were global changes, as we could see yesterday. Some of the presentation that we saw yesterday, they have noticed the change in the Hellenistic period, also in the Western Mediterranean. So it doesn't have to be that it specifically renders the Shephela in a certain way, but still I believe that the change in this part of the ancient world is meaningful. And furthermore, we can see regional disparities, such as the rarity of motherhood themes in the late Bronze and the Iron Age in Canaan and Judea, compared to other regions in the Levant, other regions in the Levant and Egypt, and vice versa, the large percentage of motherhood themes in the Persian period in Idumea, much more than in other regions. So the shift is prominent and should be considered in light of social changes. The rise of motherhood themes and the start of variety of types in general that we witness in the Persian period is perhaps due to economic stability and perhaps also prosperity that is evident also in other aspects of the material culture in that region at that time. We have in the Shephela evidence for intensive commerce, imports and exports, a rather peaceful time after the 5th century, and the formation of Idumea as an administrative and ethnic entity. Perhaps we see here the outcome of this prosperity resulting with moving up in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And as much as this model is far from being perfect, I'm aware of it, still it is very useful. The new era allowed for a shift of focus from survival mode, such as just being able to become pregnant or to keep your baby, to a more relaxed life, such as children playing, children riding, children being educated, which are portrayed in scenes of daily life. And also these scenes evoke feelings of intimacy and interaction and affection, and I believe we'll hear more about it in Stephanie's forthcoming talk. The so far underrepresented groups in society, such as young children and girls, now gained attention. This trend that has started in the Persian period reached its peak in the Hellenistic period with the new koine adopted around the Mediterranean. We can also attest a growth in literacy in these periods, more inscriptions, more evidence for writing and reading. So if to take a side, and I know I'm not supposed to take a side, but I will, the world has simply become a better place for both individuals and families, and doors were open for more segments in society. Thus, I would like to suggest that the scheme we can see here of women in terracotta figurines over time moved from a potential to maybe implicit fulfillment to fulfillment, and ended with separation with the child as a separate subject. Thank you very much.